guys, welcome to the Master's Vessel. The whole point of this channel is to be a men's lifestyle guide to figure out how to live a godly, manly life, to really truly discover what God has for men in our current day and age, and even historically, what has God held for men throughout history. I want to take a look at it through the use of this channel and really figure out how we can move forward by being masculine and being godly all at the same time, but truly embodying the things that God and what Jesus embodied as he was here on earth, came as a man to show us a true representation of how to live a true masculine, godly life. So let's get into this. So my goal and my desire is to bring teachings that are biblically based, conversations that are biblically based, and actions that are biblically based to give us a good representation of what God has for us. First place I want to start is with a worldview. What is the Christian worldview? So for that, I took a couple notes and I want to discuss it using a couple scriptures in the Bible and just walk through it and just have a conversation with you guys and just see if it's something that hits home for you like it did for me. Context, if you want to look it up now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to be in John chapter 1 verses 9 through 14 and Esther chapter 4 verse 14. Now in the past, we see people approaching religion as something cultural and casual. But is that really what God is calling us as men, as leaders to do in 2022? Doesn't he want something more than just casual? Doesn't he want something that's impactful, something that can really be life-changing and life-altering and walk-altering? God in the scripture is calling us to understand that we are different from the world. We're not supposed to be like them at all. We are supposed to be counter to what they are, and only based on what scripture tells us how to be a man and how to walk through life. And you say, with that understanding that you are on fire and ready to walk, even run after Jesus in 2022 and going forward. What is your life as a man, as a father, as a young man approaching this world look like? That's up to you to decide and you to figure out between you and God. But I encourage you to start where we're starting. What does your Christian worldview look like? Where does it begin? To figure out what I mean by worldview and where to start and where to go with all of this, I'm going to direct us to John 1 verses 9 through 14. They read as follows. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did not receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. So let's figure this out. What is grace and truth? Two big words that are thrown around constantly in 2022, and over the past couple of years, they have been constantly put out there. So what is the Christian grace and what is the Christian truth? A worldview is defined as how we see the world and interact with it. In John 1, we see that Jesus came with truth and with grace. That was his worldview. He saw absolute truth and had absolute grace for everyone. So the Greek defined truth as knowing and understanding absolute or objective truth. Look at this as knowing and understanding what is 100% fact, not based on how we feel or even how we perceive things that happen around us. Truth is fact. If I drop something, we know that it's going to fall to the ground because of gravity. That's a fact, because gravity is a fact. Therefore, it is a truth. It is not based on your feelings or what you perceive to be the right course of action for that moment. It is 100% based on fact, not feeling. So when Jesus talked about I come with grace and with truth, the truth that he is referring to and speaking of is 100% factual. In this, we also have the understanding that his writing and his scripture, what the Bible tells us, is 100% fact, and we can hold that to be true 100% of the time. Grace in the Greek is defined as joy, pleasure, delight, sweetness, charm, and loveliness. So God's grace brings out that fruit in our life. To break this down even further, God came with absolute fact that is truth, and he came with joy, pleasure, delight, sweetness, charm, and loveliness in his grace. Esther chapter 4, verse 14. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. The fruit in your life is up to you and how far you want to push into God. The context of that verse we just read in Esther, Esther is being challenged. If you don't want to do this, that's fine. God's will be done. You can either sit back and let somebody else do it, your family will perish for that, or you can step up because you were placed here for such a time as this and walk this out exactly how you deem fit to walk this out, and God will use you to set the Jewish people free. What are you doing in such a time as this? What kind of a man are you asking God to make you into for such a time as this? That's a question only you can answer. But knowing that each and every one of us was put here for such a time as this, think about that. How are you going to walk out what God has for you? How much intentionality are you going to be putting on your life? Because God has intentionality for your life. Every worldview has its own version of grace and tolerance. But I submit to you that we can't even have the basics of a Christian worldview without understanding what Jesus meant when he talked about grace and when he talked about truth in the gospel and when he brought the good news that is Jesus. We cannot even begin to understand what a Christian worldview looks like and how to interact with the rest of the world with it if we don't understand biblical grace and what biblical truth is. Using John chapter 1 as only one example, there are multiple examples of what godly grace and godly truth are throughout the scriptures. 3 thoughts to leave you with as we go. How are you going to start telling people about the gospel? You were put here for such a time as this. How does that change your look on the world and the look on your life? Are you going to go ahead and make changes? Are you going to dive deeper into his word to really figure out what he has for you in this season? It's up to you. You tell me. How are you going to do it? Lastly, You don't know who you're going to interact with on a day-to-day basis. You might be the only Jesus that they see. So what kind of man are you going to show them? Are you going to show them a man like Jesus was, or a man that's searching for a worldview and his own truth? Figure it out and walk it out. Truly decide to walk out what Jesus talked about and see where your life goes. If you would like more content like this, I'm going to put out as many studies as I can. And again, we are here to figure out what it looks like to be masculine, godly men in 22 and beyond. So come with me on this journey and let's figure out how to be the best vessel for our master that we possibly can. Have a wonderful day.